Trained in martial arts since the age of 3, kickboxer Stephen Thompson ran his record to 57-0 before moving to MMA. And in the first fight of the night on a Las Vegas pay-per-view card, Wonderboy made his highly anticipated Octagon debut. All eyes were on Thompson as the world champion striker announced himself as a force in the welterweight division. We sit down now with the perennial contender to relive the head kick that started it all in day one.
UFC 143 was my UFC debut.
We got a badass card for you guys tomorrow night.
Coming into the UFC, I was 57-0, undefeated in the world of kickboxing, and I was fighting a guy named Dan Stigen. I knew he was a grappler, a very strong grappler at that. It was kind of like a classic grappler versus striker scenario. Fight night of UFC 143 was super chill. That was the very first fight on this card. So when I walked out, there was literally nobody in the stands yet.
Thompson has an incredible combined kickboxing record of 57-0 with 40 knockouts. Really an amazing opportunity we have tonight to watch this gentleman in his UFC debut. This really should be exciting.
What was so epic about this, why I remember this so much, was that I had GSP, George St. Pierre, my idol. My inspiration to switch from kickboxing to MMA was in my corner. And at the time, like, my grappling skills were like limited to like 0. That's how green I was coming into this fight. It was crazy. So I had to keep this fight standing and knock this dude out.
Stephen Thompson, set to make his UFC debut here tonight in Vegas.
You know, when you look across at your opponent, you're trying to soak up as much as possible. What he's thinking, what he's feeling, where he's at mentally, you know? You're just counting down the milliseconds before it's go time. I know the fight doesn't start until they lock that octagon. As soon as Bruce Buffer walks out of that cage, I look over at the guy, and it was like slow motion. And after that, everything else is just a blur, because there's no thinking out there. It's all reaction.
And here we go.
I knew he was tough. He looked very, very strong, but for some reason, in that fight, his coaches wanted him to stand and strike with me, which I, to this day, am like baffled at why they would want that to happen. I knew my opponent, he likes to throw a jab, but every time he threw a jab, that hand started to drop. So I knew that the left side of his face was open. So what I did was, I was like, okay, I gotta get this guy to jab at me. So I literally dropped my hands and stuck my face out.
Stephen Thompson, he has done very little damage here in the first round. Oh, that's a wrap.
I threw my jab, my right hand came over top of his jab hand. That's when I brought my right leg up and landed right across his jaw. Referee came in and stopped it, and it was over. Hands up, ninja flip at the end, AKA corkscrew, landed it perfectly, and that was it. What was so cool about it is that my fight went viral just from the crazy knockout and the ninja flip I did.
Declaring the winner by knockout, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
The whole experience of my first event was just epic. And I'm so thankful for GSP for being there. As soon as I stepped out of that ring, man, he was there. I gave him a big hug, told him thank you.
Hey, you could have done better. You couldn't have done better.
One of my favorite fights of all time was UFC 143, my debut.